Field Vision Sports presents The Matchup with Sasha Bushka.
Kyler Murray kind of looks like a little kid running from his parents when he scrambles in the pocket.
Scott Bushka.
I had to tell my daughter that today wasn't really about her first day of school. It was really about me and the launch of our company.
And Cody Alexander.
Randomly, no. As somebody who's been around football my entire life, I literally can say that I've never smelled smelling salts, nor have I ever seen anybody actually have smelling salts. I'm sure that they were used at some point.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome into the matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to have you with us as always. We are 2 weeks, actually about 10 days away from the Super Bowl now, and we'll be getting you ready for that as the next couple of weeks progress. I'm your host, Sasha Bushka, joined by the head of football operations, Cody Alexander, and the William of Ockham of Field Vision Sports, Scott Bushka. Fellas, how we feeling today?
Doing great.
Literally no one knows what you're talking about.
William of Ockham is credited with inventing Occam's razor. Principle that the simplest answer is usually the best. So just thought we'd get that out of the way off the top. Scott always looking for the simple answer.
Love it.
I'm doing great. Thanks for not asking, Sasha. 2 weeks till Super Bowl. This is like the boring week where we get to talk about what happened and maybe talk about how the NFL's rigged. Like the rest of the NFL Twitter world is completely melting down because the Chiefs win so much. So I'm excited to get into it.
That's the exciting thing about doing a podcast is you can kind of talk about whatever you want and you can change things off the top and on the fly. So I'm going to start with that question. Cody.
Yes.
I was going to get to this at some point in the pod, but we might as well just take what's on everybody's mind off the top. Is the NFL rigged?
No. And look, football is probably one of the hardest sports to rig. It's not like basketball. It's not like even like a baseball or even soccer where you can you can miss shots, you can do different things, hold the ball a little bit longer. Like the NFL really is a chaos sport. And I do understand the argument about the penalties. And there are certain situations where you just feel like, okay, the Chiefs are always in, but that's the game the Chiefs play. I mean, it's how they play defense. It's how they play offense. I don't think anybody could walk away from that. I think typically when you talk to coaches will tell you that, one of the things that you don't ever want to do is blame the refs, because if you blame the refs and it completely takes away the fact that maybe we shouldn't run a quarterback sneak on 4th and 1 when we haven't really been that successful with it. We could maybe pick a different play. Certain things of going for 2 again and not getting it. Like there's probably a different play that you could have played in that. So, and I'm really talking about the Bills. Look, at the end of the day, the 2 best teams in the NFL are playing in the Super Bowl. We would have loved for the Lions and the Bills to be there. The problem is that the Lions defense completely fell apart, it was held by duct tape to begin with. And then the Bills just, again, their defense, especially in the secondary, not necessarily Benford and Douglas, but the safety position was just kind of an issue, and that got exposed in the Chiefs. So no, I don't think that it's rigged at all.
The interesting thing to me about the whole conversation surrounding the Chiefs, and I don't remember it being this bad with the Patriots, but maybe it's because I'm not a Patriots fan and I am a Chiefs fan, so I see more on Twitter and on social media. But the interesting thing about the conversation surrounding him is it is just fever pitch around the Chiefs being cheaters and the games being rigged for them. And the last dynasty we saw, the New England Patriots, actually got caught cheating twice. Actually got caught cheating. Spygate and Deflategate. The Chiefs have nothing like that surrounding them. Even if you want to say it's rigged, it would be the refs, not the Chiefs doing it. But people seem to all of a sudden hate the Chiefs more than any team's ever been hated. And it's I'm not sure if I hate it or love it as a Chiefs fan, but it's a different world to be living in for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a football podcast, so we probably don't need to go too deep into this, but I think the only difference is the way people consume their media in 2025 versus the way they consume their media in the heart of that Patriots dynasty.
Yeah, like 10 years
right?
ago.
Because it's just different in the way that social media is like the primary deliverer of news, the primary place where conversations happen, and rewards people with these algorithms that like you know, even Adam Schefter falls prey to, because if you get involved in the most heated, controversial conversations, it's better for your profile and it
Yeah.
gives you more followers and all that stuff. So I think that's the only difference. To me, the sad thing about it is that the Chiefs are on a truly historical and absurd run. Like, Patrick Mahomes has been a starter for 7 years. In those 7 years, he's played in 5 Super Bowls. He's won 3, potentially 4. In the other 2 years that he didn't play in the Super Bowl, he lost in overtime of the AFC Championship
Right.
game. Right? Like this the run the Chiefs are on, and the, like, I'm just going to say it, the greatness of Mahomes and his ability to, guess what, in that game, Mahomes had 2 drives where he was behind or tied in the fourth quarter, and what did he do? He went down and scored and did the thing he needed to do, including convert the 2-point conversion both times. Josh Allen had the ball with 3:33 left and he couldn't do it. He couldn't even put his team in position to score. So that should be the conversation, and all we can talk about is like how the NFL is rigged for the Chiefs, which I think quite frankly is just kind of sad.
Well, as somebody who is completely unbiased, like, just, I'm not a Patriots fan, I'm not a Chiefs fan. I mean, the thing that I think is different, and you highlighted it, Scott, is that the Chiefs don't lose. The Patriots at least lost. They went, when they had their first little dynasty, they had this lull where they really didn't win, and so it was kind of like, okay, well, that was a fluke, Brady's really not. Oh, and then okay, never mind. Then it came back again. And you did have some of the things where they did get caught kind of, with Deflategate and Spygate and things like that. And so I think we forget, and really this just is kind of how everything is. When you are the top dog, everybody's going to hate you. You're the top dog in the number one sport in this country. People are going to talk about it. And I really do think, and Felix is highlighting this, when they did have Randy Moss, which was a cheat code on offense, they didn't even win the Super Bowl that year. So I do think that there is an argument for the fact that the Chiefs are getting the same treatment with the Patriots. The only thing that I think is different is what you highlighted, Scott, is the fact that he has not lost. And when they have lost, it's been almost in what you could argue is a fluky setting. We have because it was in overtime. I mean, so I think that's what people don't like, is just the absolute utter dominance that the Chiefs have been, even when they don't even look that good. I think that's the other thing. They don't look great. And so they're not beating teams like Detroit was 40-17. They're literally winning these 1-score games.
Yeah,
Wow.
the reality is Mahomes, like, by all accounts, the way he acts, the way he carries himself, is actually pretty likable. Like, and when he first came up, everybody liked him. Like, it's just that he's beating everyone's brains out, and people are jealous that he's not liked now. And the reality is, Scott highlighted a little bit, but the Chiefs have played in 20 playoff games with Mahomes. They got blown out in the Super Bowl by the Bucs, and Mahomes didn't play very well in the game they lost to the Bengals in overtime. Didn't come through in that overtime, didn't score. Outside of those 2 games, Mahomes has basically never made a mistake in a playoff game that cost the team. The other game they lost was the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, and they never got the ball in overtime.
Right.
And like, there was it was a shootout. I don't remember the exact score, but both teams were in the 30s. So people are just tired of him beating their favorite players over and over and over.
Well, and as dumb as this sounds, like, the whole Taylor Swift thing also feeds into this. So people are like, oh, well, this is just a prop. People forget, like, Brady was married to Gisele Bunchkin, who was like, the #1 Victoria's Secret model at that time. Like, it wasn't like she was a no name. Now, she's obviously not Taylor Swift, but it was like they were painting to her and up there too. She's famous for saying he can't win. He can't play defense or catch the ball. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we're going to get into it in this pod. Maybe we're getting into it over the course of the next 2 weeks, where we can talk about the Super Bowl ad nauseum, but with the Chiefs, it's the combination of Mahomes, Reed, and Spags, right? Because
Yes.
you've got this ridiculous quarterback and offensive coordinator and head coach, but then you've got a defensive play caller who just knows how to call situational football in moments where they have to get teams off the field that other teams don't have, that Buffalo doesn't have, right? Because like, think about at the end of that game, think about the ridiculousness of like Buffalo couldn't convert a first down with 4 downs when they absolutely needed to go get a field goal. The Chiefs converted 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 9 on the next possession.
They threw a red zone fade. That's all you need to know about situational awareness. The Bills threw a red zone fade on a 3rd down. That's egregious error. That's one of the most overrated passes in all of football, and we're throwing it against 2 corners that are some of the best corners in the NFL. I know Jalen Watson didn't get to play the whole year, but since he's been back, guess what? The Chiefs have had one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, and I want to break down the Chiefs-Bills game in detail. Just real quick, because we want to get to both conference championship games, let's circle back to that Commanders-Eagles game. It wasn't as competitive, nearly as competitive as the Chiefs-Bills game, so we won't spend as much time on it. But the Eagles, 7 rushing touchdowns, 8 touchdowns overall. The Commanders, 4 turnovers. Wasn't ever really close. The Commanders had some moments where it's like, hey, if they score here, it could get close again. But then they always fumbled. Every time they made a mistake. The 4 turnovers led to 28 points for the Eagles. Let's get to the moment that everyone was talking about, though. Have you ever seen in a football game like that, the Frankie Louvu situation, Cody, where a guy is just like, I don't care how many penalties they call on me. They can't really move the ball any further forward. I'm just going to do whatever it takes to stop this tush push. And then the ref comes on and says, by the way, we can just award this team a touchdown if you keep doing this.
Well, they knew, look, that's gamesmanship. You knew they kind of had an idea. I think what they were trying to do is just to get them frazzled so that maybe they can, maybe they can get them kind of off. He was trying to time it up. I think the very first one was not on purpose. I think the rest of them were kind of like, I'm just going to do this. I think the Eagles kind of knew that. And so everybody was holding there. But yeah, no, that was kind of a unique thing. That's an unused rule that probably hasn't been used in probably 50 years that they had to go bring out for this game.
I was actually watching Good Morning Football the morning after, and they came up with the video of the one time they've ever seen it be used. And it was not an NFL game; it was a college game. And the wording in the rule book is like, if one team commits an egregious act, a touchdown can be awarded. Like if it's way outside the confines of a football game. The time it was used was in the 1950s in a bowl game, and a player came off the sidelines and tackled a guy who was breaking away for a touchdown.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Versus Alabama, I believe.
Imagine if the referee had come on and said that when the Chiefs were playing on offense.
That would have been awesome.
I think it just to shift the conversation a little bit, I think that moment is emblematic of just how overmatched the Commanders were.
Yeah.
Like in the trenches in that game, and what it was going to take for them to win, which is essentially an act of God and a bunch of fluky stuff happening, and them having to take some ridiculous chances and time them perfectly to win.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, not that the Lions game was a fluke. It wasn't a fluke, but we're probably a Baker Mayfield fumble away from the Commanders losing in the first round of the playoffs. And people are talking about them way differently. They beat the Lions, but it's like, I keep going back to like, it's 7-7. The Lions are driving. It's 3rd and 1. The Lions are driving. They're about to score. It's 3rd and 1, and Jared Goff drops back and fumbles.
Yeah.
And that game is never the same. If the Lions score there, I think it like really easily could be a blowout the other way. You can't overcome 5 fumbles. So Washington was just overmatched. The worst case scenario for them is they overestimate just how good they are, because I think they still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, especially on that defense. I mean, the defense is going to have to get fixed.
Turnover margin is always a big deal in the NFL, but it seems to be way magnified in the playoffs. And the reality is the Commanders won the turnover battle by 4 or 5 against the Lions, lost it by 4 against the Eagles. That's an 8 turnover swing. Makes a big difference in like the outcomes of the games. So that's kind of what happened there. Given that it was a 30-point game, there's not a ton to break down in terms of key plays in that game or anything like that. But I'll ask this. Washington's defense wasn't up to the task of facing the Eagles offense, obviously, but was getting a game like that under their belt for the Eagles in terms of confidence. Did that give them like a chance to find a new gear on offense and give them more confidence going into this matchup with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl?
I think look, I don't think it really changed anything. If anything, I think they do feel good by some of the injuries that they had in the interior offensive line, that they were still able to run the ball the way they were able to run. Look, the Commanders had one of the worst run defenses in the NFL all year. So again, you take it with a grain of salt. We kind of knew it was going to have to almost be a basketball game in terms of scoring for them to be in it. I think that there's still a little concern of what Hurts can do. So I don't think that there's overconfidence. I know that they know the Chiefs are going to be it's going to be a completely different beast. They're not the Commanders. Jalen Daniels, as much as we like him, is not Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I think it could help. It certainly could help Jalen Hurts, I think, in his confidence throwing the football. I mean, look, the windows are going to be tighter against the Chiefs, right? Like there's not going to be as much separation. But people, myself included, were really worried about his like ability to pass the ball and like willingness to take chances. And I thought that first throw on 4th down over the top to AJ Brown was really big for him. And it kind of seemed like it opened the floodgates for his confidence passing the ball. And if that carries over to the Super Bowl, that's a really good thing. If you go back to the 2022 Super Bowl, like Hurts was really freaking good, right? Like the Chiefs. I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into it, but the Chiefs in that game pretty much decided we're not going to let the run beat us, and Jalen Hurts almost beat them. Right. So like they're gonna do that again.
One thing, the way the Chiefs pass rush has been getting home as of late, and it's a combination of the way their secondary is playing and the way their defensive line's playing. Tom Brady did a good job on the broadcast pointing out multiple times that like Jalen Hurts dropped back, a guy was open, he just didn't throw it. Like he's going to have to throw the ball on time against the Chiefs to avoid negative plays, especially if they're going to rely heavily on the run game, which you know they will. I think they're going to have to stay on schedule, because I don't think the Chiefs will be giving up huge chunk plays to Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley might get his 100 yards. He might have some 8, 9, 10-yard runs, but I don't see him busting off the 65-yarders, even the 20, 30-yarders against the Chiefs secondary that's really good at tackling.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see how Spags decides to play this. If he decides to bring his odd stack defense that he really loves to play against some of these kind of more run heavy. I mean, he brought it out against the Buccaneers. And when they run a lot of 12 personnel, the Eagles are a spread to run team. So that to me is going to be the question. I do agree with both of y'all. Hurts is going to have to throw the ball in order to win this game. If he throws for 60 yards like he did a couple weeks ago, like they're probably losing this game, probably by a couple of scores.
Yeah, well, now we're just breaking down the Super Bowl, which we
go ahead.
But
let's break down the Super Bowl. That's the only game left, Scott.
No, well, I was just gonna say the thing that's interesting about the Hurts versus Spags matchup is like Spags knows how to heat you up, and most elite quarterbacks are pretty good when you try to heat them up, right? Josh Allen included. So Spags did it sparingly and in choice situations, as I'm sure we'll talk about. Hurts isn't as good, and he'll take some sacks and he'll make some poor decisions, or he's taking sacks because he doesn't want to make the poor decisions. So that to me is probably where the game, at least on that side of the ball, will be won or lost.
Yeah. It'll be an interesting cat and mouse because like the Chiefs got 8 sacks against the Texans. Stroud has been holding the ball a little long this year, but also the Texans offensive line is not the Eagles offensive line. So
Correct.
there'll be some differences there for sure. We've been dancing around it, and this is what everyone wants to talk about anyways. Let's get into that Chiefs-Bills game. We talked a little bit about it off the top. Cody, you alluded to it, but I'll start with one of the key plays that wasn't the 4th and 5 that the Bills didn't make that basically decided the game. The tush push on 4th and 1. First of all, did he make it? Second of all, the thinking behind running that play there.
Yeah, I don't think he made it. I mean, you can look at it a million times. It's probably 50-50. It's probably the closest that I've probably ever seen a ball. I think if you're able to see the tip of the ball, which you're not able to because of the way that Allen's holding it, then you might be able to argue whether it was good, but you couldn't do that. And it goes down to like the same thing in the court of law. Like if there's reasonable doubt, you have to acquit, right? So it's the same thing in that of like, if there's reasonable doubt that he didn't make it and the call was that he didn't make it, then you have to go with the original call. At the end of the day, you have to give it. Now, the whole deal with the chip and how can we do this with tennis and tennis and soccer, that's a moving ball on a field that they can calculate that. I don't necessarily know putting a chip at the end of the ball
with like very consistent grid lines.
Exactly. I don't know, putting it, maybe you can do that. I don't know. I mean, obviously we'd have to look at the mechanics of that, but I just don't like, now we're just kind of like, we're trying to manufacture ways that, people can beat Mahomes and Mahomes still keeps winning. So I don't know if that's, but yeah, when you see that they are prepared for it, the one thing that is different about the way that the Bills were running their tush push versus the Eagles is that they don't have anybody behind the guards. They just were it's the front. And so the Chiefs knew that, and they got everybody in a tilt position. They put Chris Jones right there in the A gap where he wanted to go. And then on that left side or the right side of the defense, the left side of the offense, and they just knifed everybody in to trying to create a wall so that he couldn't really go anywhere. So once you see that, okay, they've kind of schemed us up, that's when you need to go to a different play.
I think the phrase you were looking for in regards to acquittal, Cody, is if the glove don't fit.
You must quit.
Exactly. But I think
another great football reference
based on Bill's reference, no less.
Good point.
Yes, it is.
Based on some of the things I've been seeing around Twitter from Scott, I think he has an opinion on this as well.
I don't have much more to add than what Cody just said. It was a 50-50 call. It was called short on the field. They looked at it for 5 minutes, and that was really the only logical conclusion they could come back with. If you don't come to that conclusion, you haven't watched enough football, or you're just looking for excuses, right? To me, the more interesting conversation is that the Bills ran that play a lot. The Chiefs defended it as well as anyone I've seen defend it, to the point where 4 plays earlier, Josh Allen had to jump over the line and put the ball
and
out.
Almost fumbled it.
He did fumble.
He did. He almost lost it.
Which no one's talking about the fact that there were 5 fumbles in this game. The Bills recovered every single one somehow, and the Chiefs
Game's
still
rigged.
won. Game's totally rigged. Totally rigged. So yeah, I mean, and if you play it forward, whatever. I'm over talking about whether the fourth down. I'm over both talking about whether or not that was a first down or not, and whether or not Xavier Worthy's catch was a catch or not. The interesting thing moving forward is that I know it's different, but the Chiefs have at least proven that they have a way to defend that play. It's probably going to be really important in the Super Bowl. Because I have no doubt the Eagles can probably get half yards on those plays, but I think the Chiefs have probably got them thinking if it's 1.5 to 2 yards, we're not fully comfortable that our go-to tush push play is going to work as well as it has.
The Eagles are much better at it than the Bills. Jalen Hurts gets low. He doesn't just false step, as Felix pointed out in the chat, and go over the left guard. The interesting thing about the Xavier Worthy play, and it's the interesting thing about the discourse on this stuff in general, is people just leave out whatever doesn't fit their narrative. The reality is there's a penalty on that play against the Bills. It was a holding, so it would have only been 5 yards, but the Chiefs are still getting a first down, whether they call that a catch or not.
Yeah, but I'll take it one step further. Not only was there a penalty, and I thought about this live as it was happening. They would have a first down on the 20. There was essentially 2 minutes left in the half. If they don't make that penalty, the Chiefs probably run the clock out, and they're more than likely going to score anyways. They scored on 4 of their 5 red zone trips anyways, right? And the Bills don't get the ball back, and it's 21-10 at halftime instead of 21-16.
Yeah, it's
so I would argue that, like, if anything, that getting called there probably helped the Bills because they got the ball back, they scored a touchdown. That whole sequence ended up being net neutral for them, except for they didn't convert the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, there's nuances on these things. It's the same as Mark Andrews' drop in the Bills-Ravens game. It's like, oh, the Ravens would have won in overtime. Well, there was a minute 33 left on the clock, and Josh Allen was about to get the ball. So, and that's different because you're not talking about like officiating decisions, but it's still like people will only look at it the way that supports their argument, which is Mark Andrews lost us the game. Which
Totally.
is relatively true, but like to say that the Ravens were going to guaranteed win if that happened is false for sure.
Right. But also like complete phantom pass interference call on Trent McDuffie on the following drive in the end zone, which would have given the Bills Hollins ends up catching the ball. Great. The official obviously doesn't know that when he throws the flag. So it's like we completely leave out that type of stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean,
every call is being dissected to the nth degree, but only if it goes for the Chiefs.
Right.
Yeah.
But at this point, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Chiefs fan. That's just the way people are wired right now because they want to see them lose at all costs. And if they don't lose, they want it to be because it's rigged and it's because of the refs. It can't be because they're just better at winning close games than everyone else.
Right. Everybody's looking for confirmation bias. So another famous example from where I'm at in Dallas is the Dez caught it. People forget that there were 4 minutes left in the game. So even if he scored, you're giving Aaron Rodgers 4 minutes, he's going to score. So it's like it's not one of those things that people just sit on these pivotal plays and they forget that not one singular play lives in a vacuum. An NFL game typically has between 120 to 130 plays. So 60 is 65 on each side for each offense and defense. And so there's things that go on in each game that either add to what you're trying to do or subtract. And if you really look at it, the missed 2-point conversion, I think wasn't there a missed field goal?
2 missed 2-point conversions and the Chiefs made one. That's your 3 points right there.
That's your point. So the game ends the way that it's supposed to end. And when you go back and you look at it and it's like, okay, well, they missed those points. The Chiefs got that points. It was execution. It wasn't necessarily a rigged game. And who's to say that they go down and score if they make that 4th down? That's the other thing is like we all tell these lies to ourselves in these stories. We write this story how we want it to be, which goes back to the confirmation bias argument.
I want to get into a strategic thing about the way the Chiefs played this game. But first, I want to highlight what Cody was saying about the 2-point conversions, because I think that's kind of a missed point in this game. The Chiefs and the Bills were both posed with the same decision early in that game, which is the Bills scored a touchdown, penalty on the Chiefs that's enforced on the extra point. They said, we're going to put it on the 1 and go for 2. They missed it. The Chiefs later on one of their touchdowns had the exact same thing happen, but they just moved it up to the 7.5 and kicked the extra point and took the points. And then that forced the Bills into going for 2 later when they went up by 1. So they missed another one. If they just kick those 2 extra points, they're up 3 instead of a tie game when the Chiefs scored to tie it up 29-29, or when the Chiefs scored and went up 29-22. it's a 3-point difference. The
Yeah.
Chiefs kicking that extra point and the Bills missing those 2-2s, and it changes everything about the back and forth at the end of the game. So it was a pivotal decision in the game for sure.
Well, this
Especially
is
when you have them in good and short yardage.
Well, this is also to kind of where we are analytically with football, and whether good or bad. Analytics, I feel like, has made the game a lot better, a lot cleaner. But we do get into a sense of where I think a lot of times we're checking a chart and we're saying, okay, well, if we get this score, we need, the guy upstairs is telling me, oh, well, we got to go for 2 right here. You know, my dad's coached forever. My dad's been coaching for almost 35, 40 years. One of the things that he's always said is you don't chase points early. So if it's early in a game, yeah, it may analytically be like, okay, if we get this score, we need to go for this 2. But in the end, you really want to chase points in the second half. You don't want to chase points early because you don't know. Look, you don't know what the end of the
You
game
really
is
don't
gonna
want to
look
do
like.
it until the late in the third quarter, fourth quarter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Julian Edelman said it on Twitter earlier. I think it, like, someone asked him about the refs, and he was like, it's such BS. The reason the Chiefs win is the same reason that we won when we were the Patriots, is we were more prepared than everyone else, and we executed flawlessly in the most important moments, period.
Yeah.
And like, that's what you can point to 10 moments in that game where the Chiefs executed exactly what they wanted to do and the Bills didn't, and get lost in all of the furor over the ref talk. Is that that game was a masterclass by Reed and Mahomes. Like,
Yeah.
that first drive, the RPOs, how quickly the ball was coming out of Mahomes' hand, his look off to Kelsey, and then like throwing over the middle to Hollywood Brown and Juju. Like, I thought it looked like vintage Mahomes in terms of the pace, the decision making, the finding receivers. There was a 4th and 1, not on that first drive, but 4th and 1 from like the Chiefs 40-yard line that they went for it. You know what they did? I mean, the Chiefs never do, but the Chiefs didn't try to ram in the middle of the line. They got Patrick Mahomes out on the edge, and it goes for like a 10-yard gain. Like, like I said, it was a masterclass by Reed in his play calling, a masterclass in the execution by Mahomes, and then Spags in the moments that mattered the most, right? Like, a masterclass by him.
I was surprised. I was surprised that they went for that, Scott. As you were watching, I'm glad they went for it, but as you were watching, didn't you expect Andy Reid to punt that ball away?
Definitely surprised. Definitely surprised. Andy Reid, in all the years I'm watching him, punts that 95% of the time. Yeah. I think he just knew Chiefs haven't scored over 30 points all year. I think he knew, like, we're probably gonna have to get to 30 to win this.
Yeah, and he had the right play for it, and so yeah. I want to ask this: Josh Allen is the running quarterback in this game, right? He's known for being a great running quarterback, and then Mahomes comes out and basically says, "Hold my beer. I'm going to win this game with my legs." Like it, and we know that Mahomes can run, but only doesn't when needed. He had 11 carries in this game, I think, and some of those were kneel downs at the end. But he ran the ball a lot. What did the Chiefs see in the Bills' defense that they're like, we're going to use Mahomes' legs to win this game for us?
Zone coverage. That deep zone coverage, everybody's getting deep, getting depth to really cloud that intermediate, and that's giving you about a 10-yard cushion when you have a 4-down line and you're not able to hit home and you're able to kind of pick up the games that they're running up front. Then Mahomes has access to the field, and that's essentially what we saw there.
Is just a strategic question, Cody, because a lot of times you hear about like man coverage, everybody's back's turned, you got to be careful of the run. You're saying deep zone. Is it more like designed runs are great against the deep zone coverage, and against man coverage, it's more about the impromptu scrambles?
It's actually the opposite. So like if you're going to run a lot of man coverage, you want to run the design quarterback runs because you can get that extra blocker early in the down. Whereas in zone coverage, you let everybody bleed out and then we're going to go. And the problem with the Bills is that for whatever reason, they decided to play man coverage against the Chiefs, which is usually a nightmare scenario. I mean, even the Lions, Aaron Glenn, who is the man guy kind of in the NFL right now, he didn't want to even do it when they originally played. He played more zone. And I think they really thought that with their two corners, they could play man. And then once you have Benford go down, I felt really bad for Elam. And if you want to make it even more, go look at that 2022 draft class of corners. It's a who's who in the NFL, and you're the one guy that got drafted in the first round and can't play football.
Well, didn't the Chiefs took McDuffie the pick ahead of Elam?
McDuffie, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley Jr.
Benford, who is an all-pro corner, was a 7th-round draft pick from Villanova. And you have Elam, who can't get on the field. So I mean, to me, once Benford went down, you had to go away from man coverage. But at the end of the day, you can't run man against the Chiefs. You can't run zone against them. You're going to have to match up one-on-one. You're going to have to make Mahomes make mistakes, and it just didn't happen.
I mean, I think Kelsey scared the shit out of him in a weird way. That like one game by Kelsey against the Texans is like, oh shit.
I actually was looking at that
that's always
today.
the thing is like, if we play zone, Kelsey's going to do weird mind meld Kelsey things and like go off. Yeah. And so they were afraid to do that. They played more man than they should. And it's like, oh man, Xavier Worthy's really fast on these crossers.
Yeah,
right. And Kyer Elam can't keep up with him.
It was the one game against the Texans that made him scared of Kelsey, but he also had 14 straight playoff games over 70 receiving yards heading into that game. He gets 19 in that game. Like, you tell Chiefs fans that Kelsey's only going to get 19 heading into the game, you're probably a little bit worried, but like, it was never like their offense looked great all game. They just did it another way.
Yeah, you're right. Back to just, Sasha, to quickly your point about Mahomes running, and this is going to sound like a ridiculous comment, but I actually think it's true. He is so much better of a football player than people give him credit for. And I'm saying football player because he always
finishes those runs, dude.
Huh?
Like, he finishes those runs. He slides a lot, but if he decides that he's got to get to the end zone, he lays people out.
Right. He finished well. He's a very good athlete, which no one gives him credit for, but he always does what he needs to do to move the chain, score a touchdown, win the game, right? And it reminds me of like Turkey Bowl Thanksgiving football, where a quarterback's just like, okay, what is going to get me the most yards? Like throwing the ball downfield, or did everyone drop and I'm just going to run? Like he just always does it. Like his field vision, no pun intended. It's actually kind of why we named the company that, is he has such an uncanny sense of what's the play that's actually going to get me the most yards and be the most beneficial to what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And I mean, it's calculated risk too. Like, if it's second down and you've got a receiver down the field as you and I can gain 7 yards, but I might gain 50 throwing it down, he'll throw it.
Of course.
But like, if it's third down and you need the first down, like he's gonna do what it takes. And yeah, he's a good football player. He's a tremendous athlete. And I don't think, and you mentioned that, but like, yeah, he doesn't have the highest 40 time, but like his football skills are there in terms of like flexibility, agility, what you need, and he's just faster than the guy behind him.
Yeah.
Man, I feel good about having Mahomes as the quarterback of the team.
Yeah.
All
right.
Let's
need to move on from the Mahomes love fest.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like so many people just quit listening.
Like,
let's get into the play that everyone's talking about. Josh Allen, 4th and 5, need the first down to keep the drive alive. It's a tie ball game. Basically 2 minutes left. And it might have been exactly 2 minutes.
It was exactly
coming out of the 2-minute warning. And he gets pressure off his roll to the right side, throws up a prayer. Dalton Kincaid, which people are way underestimating how hard of a catch that would have been, because he was completely facing the other way.
He's
and had to
back,
fall the other way to try to catch it. Doesn't make the catch though, and the Chiefs run out the clock and win the game. What break down that play for us, Cody? What could Josh Allen have done differently, and what would have been unrealistic to expect him to do on that side of it as well?
Occam's razor, like we talked about pre-show, the easiest the name of Scott, right, is look, they set the protection wrong. They did this protection completely wrong. Spags lulled them to sleep in the sense that he didn't bring any pressure. If you go and look at it in our analytics of it, he only blitzed like at 16% of the time. So he really did not blitz at all. But if you've watched the Chiefs or if you've followed me at all, you give him a condensed set on a pivotal play, you are getting 2 defenders through the B gaps. And so he set that up really nicely by mugging Reed in that gap. And so what ends up happening, and I still don't understand, they really did not think that they were going to blitz because the way that they slid the center to Jones. So they picked up the most dangerous. They were basically playing big on big protection, meaning that the D line was taken by the offensive line, and they slid the center to Jones to make sure that the double was over there. The problem with that is you have a condensed set, which the Chiefs also press the most out of everybody in the NFL. And so because they do that, they are now shortening that distance for the corner, and they're not giving any tails away. And so what you get is 2 defenders through the B gap. You essentially get a 4-man slide to the field, and you don't have anybody there to pick them up. So then you go to the actual play call. One of the trends offensively here for the NFL has been quads formations. You put 4 to a side. The Chiefs are going to run a 5-man pressure. So do the math. That means they're going to have 6 guys. They're going to have a defensive lineman be one of them that's dropping out. And then they're going to have the Mike linebacker, who's also Mug Bolton. He's going to also cut to that side. They bring Shakir. This is a play that they ran against the Bills earlier in the year. They bring Shakir back, and then they whip him back out in a toral motion or a return orbit motion. And all that is a man zone indicator. They're looking to see if the Chiefs are in man, which in some of these pivotal cases that you will see the Chiefs be in. But then they're also looking to see if they're zone. No one moved. And the reason why no one moved, they're playing zone. And it's a play it call, meaning that it doesn't matter what they get, they're going to play it out. That tells Allen, I don't have the check down right now, because that's what he did against the Bills. Is he threw the check down to Shakir. Shakir comes out, and I think it was a huge play because he just run.
You mean against the Chiefs?
Yeah, Chiefs. Sorry, the Bills ran against Chiefs. Everybody clears out. He ends up going for a huge gain, right? Well, it's zone. So in his mind, that guy's automatically X'd out. He's the last guy I'm going to look at. He has to now look at safety rotation, which if you watch the play, his eyes are on the safety rotation, which the safeties shift because they blitz the corner. So the whole secondary is shifting. So he's looking at really in reality, can I get Kincaid deep? Okay, because I know he's going to backdoor that safety that's working opposite. They're going to pass like 2 trains in the night.
Yeah, which he did.
Which he eventually gets to. But then as he's looking down, he then has to also realize which mesh is going to be my outlet. So if I can't hit deep, I've got to be able to hit one of those. By that time, you have Reed, who's completely unabated into his vision. He's a right-handed quarterback. Where do you think he went? He went to the right. In a moment of panic, you go to your right. That's what you do. You deepen up and you go to your right. That's what he did, and he launched the ball. This whole thing, we can sit here and talk about this whole thing. If they check the protection to the condensed, they're going to go. Now, this will be the interesting thing, because if you guys go back to the Super Bowl against the 49ers, the Chiefs actually bluff this look, right? They get it. The 49ers get into condensed. Kittle's actually supposed to go to the field. He decides he's going to go opposite because he knows there's going to be a blitz off the condensed. The Chiefs blitz off the condensed. But what do? They run their favorite cover zero pressure, where they attack B gaps with the corner and the nickel, which ends up being McDuffie. What does McDuffie do? He puts his hands up, bats the ball down, game is over. So the Bills have to be thinking at this point, you got it. But they didn't. So the easiest way of figuring this out was that you just shift the protection to the condensed side. It's the Chiefs. That's what you should be doing anyway. You just figure, look, if Jones gets free, we can at least just dump it off to Shakir, who's one of the best yak gods in the NFL, right? He's the yak creator. So we'll be able to do it. The problem is he never had a chance, and he was never going to look at Shakir, and he can't throw a behind the back pass. This isn't basketball. And also, last thing, I know, Scott, you want to get it. You don't throw in 4th and 5 to a guy that's 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
It's such a good breakdown, Cody. It's one thing that I have not heard a lot of people talk about, which I think would have been a really difficult thing to do in this situation, but the Bills let that run down for probably 20, 30 seconds to the 2-minute warning. Worst case scenario is you give Spagnuolo a timeout to do what he just did to you. Right. Because like in that scenario, you have to ask yourself, is it more valuable? And I think about this a lot, but is it more valuable that we have the timeout, or is it more valuable that, or like, does the defense get value out of it? And in this, and I think that the answer to that really comes down to like, whose coordinator's better. Right. And in this scenario, like, if you just get up and run a play, you don't give the Chiefs the chance to dial up what they just dialed up. Yeah. And the play happens on this side of the 2-minute warning. So you have another stoppage of the clock, like in the event that you don't make it. So I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that, but like in retrospect, I bet they're like, man, I wish we didn't give Steve Spagnuolo 3 minutes to dial up that pressure.
Yeah. And I told everyone I was with, and I even texted our chat for the company, Spags lives for this. Like, that's 100%. The play that you have Spags for, is to make that call in that moment. And he made a better call than they made offensively. And
well, I mean, something that's also not talked about is that Allen actually faked the snap to see if he was going to get the blitz. And because in a classic Spags, because you have a press corner, a mug linebacker, and a mug safety, nobody had to move. And they weren't going to jump anyway because it's 4th and 5. The Chiefs are well coached. You're going to not jump because if you jump, they get the ball. It's now first down. So everybody is just waiting for the snap. So Allen, again, lulled to sleep, didn't think that they needed to shift the protection. They don't shift the protection. They go to the field to Jones's side, and it ends up 2 free runners through the B gap.
Yeah, I actually can't believe that McDuffie didn't show at all when Allen did that hard count. Like I was watching him, and it's like he didn't move. He looks like he's in coverage, hard count, and then he goes.
Trust in the scheme. You're going to get free. So there's no reason that I need to give any kind of indicator. And because I press all the time, I mean, I look like I'm going to be in coverage. Again, it comes down to coaching. You practice these moments. You know that the Chiefs are practicing these moments. The Chiefs have been in these big moments. And not only that, that's his favorite pressure. That pressure that you see, he runs it to the field side with the nickel, and he runs it to the boundary side with the corner. That's his favorite pressure. So those Chiefs have run that play a million times. It goes back to what we said, Occam's razor. It's the most simplest play. It's our favorite play. We're going to run it. It's our favorite coverage behind it. Tango pressure, which means we're going to play palms behind it. And we're going to do it in a situation that's high level, but it doesn't matter because we run it a million times. And we're going to put all the pressure on a team that's trying to get over the hump, and they couldn't.
Why did Joe Brady and the Bills give Spags a condensed pressure to play with there?
To me again, I don't know. I think this is why the Eagles are a little different, because the Eagles are spread to run. He's not going to be able to do things like that. But man, you give Spags a condensed set. It's funny because I posted the same thing. So right after the play, I said, if you followed me at all, you knew this was going to happen. If you give a condensed set to Spags, and I had so many people like, I was yelling at the TV, don't do it, Bills, don't do it. And they did it, and they got what they deserved because they didn't. Again, they thought he wasn't going to blitz, and he did.
They got what they deserved. I like that look at it. Not a lot of people are saying that about the Bills right now. They got what they deserved.
People need to, and by people I mean Felix. that explanation by Cody needs to be cut and shared with the world, because it's the best breakdown that I've heard.
I don't know if you've been following the the private chat on this call, but it's been taken care of.
Oh, I have. I'm just encouraging people to listen to it because Cody's a little bit different than some data jockeys that have been breaking it down. Not that we don't like data around here. We like data, but
real quick to wrap this game, the game was not over after that play. It seemed like it was over, but there was a minute and 40 some seconds left and 3 timeouts for the Bills. The Chiefs gained more yards on their running out the clock drive than the Bills gained on their we need points to continue this game drive. The Bills gained 17 yards on that drive, and the Chiefs gained 20 some. A lot of people have been talking about this, but Andy Reid trusts in a play to Samaje Perine, the third running back, third down back. Nobody thought the ball was going to him to close out the game, and it happens pretty flawlessly. Scott's talked about this a lot, but I think it says a lot about, like, if you're on the Chiefs, Andy Reid expects you to make plays, and more times than not, they do. Like, if you're suited up for the game and it's the right time to call your number is going to get called.
Yeah, and I mean, too, with Perine, we act like Perine is like some like bit player. I mean, Perine was a big time player for the Bills before. Yeah. I mean, he was with the Broncos before. But yeah, and he's one of the best. People forget he's actually a really good screen running back, and that's exactly what they use him for. And that highlights Reid. He knows exactly how to get his guys. I mean, think about it. We all thought Worthy was just going to be a deep threat guy, and Worthy's really taken over the Rashee Rice tree and flats, screens, outs, get him in space, get him going.
Just a quick correction: Bengals and Broncos for Perine, I believe. I don't want the Bills fans listening, which none of them are by this point, anyways. But I don't want them to write us any nasty letters.
Yeah, I mean that play is actually what the Chiefs brought Perine in to do.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like very, very trusted out of the backfield catcher of the football. It was. What's crazy is actually that the Chiefs executed that situation twice. Because when it's a killer when Pacheco goes out of bounds.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if he did actually, but that was second down, I think.
Yeah.
But
no one's talking about it. If that would have been the Bills, people would have went nuts for them calling him out of bounds. But
yeah,
no, it was a second down. But anyways, they executed that situation twice. It was the perfect play call. Because if they don't convert that and Allen gets the ball back with 40 seconds left, it's plenty of time to go down and get a field goal.
Yeah, and if that goes incomplete, which we've seen in games this year by the Eagles, Falcons, week 2 or 3, Saquon drops the ball. If that goes incomplete, then it's like, I think, well over 40 seconds for Josh Allen. So, Chiefs executed in the right moments. Not a big shock there. Now we've got the Eagles and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. We'll break all that down next week. Really quick, I'm going to add Felix to the stage to close out the conversation. The Super Bowl is not this week. That means the Pro Bowl is. And I'm bringing Felix in because I think he has like some opinions in this. Should they still be playing a game for the Pro Bowl?
Talk about the damn Pro Bowl. Go ahead. What's up?
Felix, the best segment.
The Pro Bowl.
I'm gonna be honest.
Golly, like we were talking about all the fun things. Double motion. Andy Reid's the best. Patrick Mahomes is even better. Felix, how do you feel about stuff that doesn't matter? I don't know. Damn.
Are you gonna be watching Slime Time?
If you're gonna bring Felix on just to talk about the Pro Bowl, I'd probably prefer to not bring Felix on or talk about the Pro Bowl.
That's a good point. Felix, thanks for coming on. That's going to do it for the matchup.
Yeah. Jesus.
In all honesty, I'm glad they play flag football now because what they were trying to claim was a football game before wasn't even close. It was thud only, and it looked stupid.
All right. I'm calling an audible on Sasha. Felix, I'm going to give you a more interesting question now that we brought you on. We're not going to break down the game. We'll do that next week. But early look Chiefs -1.5. How are you feeling about that? Do you think it's going to move either way? Like, what are your thoughts?
It shouldn't move. I mean, the Chiefs probably will win by 2 points or 1 point or whatever it would be, because that's exactly how they won the last time they played the Eagles in the Super Bowl. And this is essentially the same team, like almost to the T, where Jalen Hurts got hurt towards the end of the season, and then they had to go to their backup quarterback, still kept winning a couple of games, and then their rushing attack. I mean, obviously Saquon's supercharged what they're doing, and so it's interesting while you guys were talking about all the fun things, and then I got stuck with the Pro Bowl. I was scrolling through Instagram, and the Chiefs, I believe the number is they haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher in 18 straight playoff games. So I don't think that Saquon Barkley is going to win the Super Bowl for the Eagles. It's going to have to be Jalen Hurts, kind of like what he did the first time they played in the Super Bowl. He had a bunch of yards, and it basically came down to, well, he fumbled that football, and it was returned for a touchdown. Other than that, he played almost a flawless game.
Yeah, interestingly, Saquon's rushing prop opened at like 112, which I think is high. And
Yeah, that's really high.
Yeah, the Vegas is in a wild conundrum on what to do with the Chiefs right now, because when they play these top tier teams like the Bills or the Eagles, the reality is all the advanced metrics, everything that they would normally take into consideration to make a line, are going to tell you to favor the other team. But then the Chiefs always win the game, and so they've just settled on favoring the Chiefs by a little bit, so they get a little juice on people placing the money line Chiefs bet, and hope for the best. Cross your fingers. Hope we don't get murdered too bad.
That's 100% right, and we know that because it's the same place our model's in, right?
Yeah, right.
But like last week, our model favored the Bills. I think we all actually intuitively knew, like, Patrick Mahomes at home, like,
yeah,
we'll take the
and
Chiefs. But
I just
metrics didn't tell you that.
Just early look, the model likes right now the Eagles by 2, and the Eagles are 1.5 point dogs, so that's a big difference.
Yeah, and I'll let the listeners into a little inside baseball here. I had a conversation this morning with the powers that be that own the model about probably just taking out week 18 for both of these teams, which I think is the right thing to do, which will tighten that gap a little bit, but I would presume that our model is still going to favor the Eagles.
I would assume too.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting game, to say the least, and we'll break it all down next week in detail. But hey, I'm excited for it.
Felix, you just I thought you mentioned same line as last time. Weren't the Eagles favored by 1.5?
I mean, like, it would be a game like it was last time. I don't know exactly what
the Eagles were favored last time. Yeah, but the Chiefs hadn't won 2 Super Bowls in a row at that point, and so it was like, yeah, the Eagles are better, so they're favored.
Well, and I think this, and again, we'll talk more about this next week, but I think that was a better Chiefs offense. That's Mahomes coming off the MVP. They had scored like the most points, or like the 4th most points in NFL history. And like he swept all the awards that year. This is a better Chiefs team, I think, where the defense is better. And even now, even though the offense isn't what it was, it's still as efficient as it can be.
Yeah. It's definitely a better Chiefs team than last year.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to 2 years ago, it's pretty close, I think.
Yeah.
Both
weirdly, I think this is the most balanced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, Felix, I have one last question for you. This is better than anything Scott's going to ask
about the Pro Bowl if you really
want. I don't care. I pretended to care for a second, but this is way better than anything Scott's going to ask you. If the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, will you be taking your tarp off in a public place?
Yeah. What else? Why not? Like, I mean, it's the first three-peat in NFL history. Hopefully, I'm with you.
Fair enough. I think it's great. Tarp, code for shirt, by the way, for the listening audience. Felix may have taken his shirt off the last time the Chiefs beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl.
The only why
on me. If we're gonna out me, Sasha was also involved.
The only why not could be you're a public figure now.
I was a public figure when I did it back then, too.
At least
we were together, highly recognizable.
Yeah, that's fair. Any last words for the audience before we break, and we'll get you ready for the Super Bowl next week?
Here's the thing about the Pro Bowl. No, I'm joking. I don't
All right, that's going to do it for the matchup.
Sasha needs the ice bath today.
I got something better than that. That's going to do it for the matchup by Field Vision Sports. Follow us on X at Field Vision MI, Instagram Field Vision Sports. Check out the website fieldvisionsports.com. Some cool stuff coming down the pike in the next few weeks. Be on the lookout for that. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Please don't tell us what you have that's better than an ice bath.
I'm going to go eat some meatloaf.
Okay.